Hey guys, sorry it's been a while since my last video. It's been crazy here with my wife having surgery and everything. I've been wanting to do a series, a beginner series for quite a while now. This is going to be the first video of that series, and this is going to be about how to pick a camera for you. Now, the best camera is the camera that you have, and for a lot of folks, it may be their iPhone or Samsung or what other smartphone that you have. There's a lot of cool camera apps that you can have that allows you to change the settings, the shutter speed, ISO, and shoot in manual. But if you're looking for a camera, I'm going to give you some recommendations. There's a lot of good cameras. It really comes down to what you're trying to do with it, how much you can afford. But there are a couple things that I will recommend that you look for if you're buying a dedicated stills or video camera. Again, a lot can be had with either your cell phone or mom and dad's or a family camera that's laying around, an old DSLR. Perfectly fine. It gets you a starting point, and then later if you figure out really what you're looking for and what you want to improve from there, you can always change it up then. Now we're fortunate today that there's so many great cameras on the market, and most of them are fairly inexpensive. There used to be a time where you had to buy a pro level camera to get great results. Just not the case anymore. In front of me right here you have the Canon M50. Takes great photos, great video. It's got the Canon dual pixel autofocus, flip screen, which a lot of us think is really cool. But when you're looking at stills, I don't recommend this camera or a camera like it. The reason being is the lack of manual controls. Now, when you're shooting photography, you want to easily have access to three different settings: ISO, the aperture, and shutter speed. Now, look at this camera. I mean, yeah, a lot of people use the touch screen. Again, if you have this camera or one like it, it'll work. But you really want to be able to adjust manually some setting on the camera, either a button, lever, wheel, ISO, aperture, shutter speed. You're going to want to shoot manual. These cameras aren't really designed for that. They're really, catering to the people that just want to point and shoot, set it on full auto, and let it rip. Great quality, but lack of controls. And that's really what you start paying for when you start getting on the higher end cameras. Now, just to the opposite spectrum of the lack of manual controls on the Canon M50 is Fujifilm. I love Fujifilm. Now, if you love manual controls, I recommend you take a look at Fujifilm. They have the compensation dial, or exposure compensation, shutter speed, all dedicated dials, ISO, and then on the back and the front, you see this is a button here, and right here is a dial wheel, a wheel back here, and you can really configure almost everything to how you want it, which is great. You can either go into the menu, have the dials, or do old school, kind of like an SLR camera, and just kind of dial it in by looking at it without even going to a menu. I prefer that. I know that's not for everyone. It's a personal choice. So either you have a dial, have a camera that has a dial, physical dedicated dials, whatever, but you want to be able to get to those three exposures without having to go into a menu. That's the goal. Let's talk sensor size, because size does matter. You're going to find there's going to be three main categories or sensor sizes on the market. The smallest being micro four thirds, and you're going to find this a lot on the Panasonic and Olympic cameras. When I say small, it's small, but it's still going to be much bigger than a cell phone sensor or a GoPro, something like that. The middle class, or the in-between class, is going to be the APS-C, or also referred to as a crop sensor. Now, the Fuji X-T2 and now the X-T3, the Canon M50, and many other consumer level Canon DSLRs and Nikon DSLRs that have been made for years, you'll find that this class is one of the largest, right? The third and the biggest category is full frame. Now, this full frame has traditionally been reserved for the very elite professional photographer, cameras costing upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 just for the camera. And really Sony, there's been a big push for the last couple of years. Sony's pushed that envelope because with their A7 offering, and especially recently the A7 III, they've offered a lot of camera for not a lot of money, right around that $2,000 bracket. So achievable for the hobbyist and consumer. And it's also pushed other manufacturers to do the same. Canon just came out with a couple consumer or prosumer level of cameras with a full frame sensor. So why do sensors matter, right? So I recommend you buy nothing smaller than the APS-C side. The smaller Micro Four Thirds, if you have good light, they'll do a great job. And if you have one, don't feel bad about it. Still can produce awesome quality pictures. But if you're buying a new camera, sensor size does matter. Two reasons. One is your depth of field or blurry background. You can call it background separation or subject separation. So that can be achieved easier with the bigger sensor. It can be done on the smaller size, but not as much, and you have to buy like the crazy fast glass or the biggest aperture glass for the Micro Four Thirds, and it still doesn't come close to some of the larger sensors. The second reason is ISO or high ISO performance. Now, if we're shooting on all three of the camera systems and you look at that same shot and exposure at 400 ISO, 800, 16, 32, and so on, you'll notice a gap between the three categories as you start increasing your ISO. Big importance when it's you're shooting event photography, you're shooting a wedding inside, there's not a lot of light, and that's where sensor size comes into play. If you're looking at a Fuji X-T2 compared to a Sony A7 III, they both have 24 megapixel, but the sensor is bigger. It means their photo diodes, whatever they're called, the eyeballs, they're going to gather more light per that area, right? So if I'm shooting at ISO 3200 with both cameras, I'm going to see a more grain on the Fuji than I would most likely on the A7 III. And I didn't do a one-for-one comparison, but you're going to see a huge gap in the Micro Four Thirds. It's just they're great for outside, but if you're shooting inside, again, preference and quality, and I'd hate to see somebody buy a camera that won't grow with them. APS-C or full frame would be my recommendation in this category. Now this series, and really my channel overall, mainly focuses on the stills side of photography and cameras rather than video. But that said, that's not to disregard the importance of video when you're looking to buy a new camera system. Now, you might not have any ambitions right now to shoot video or a video project, but that may change down the road. Now, you could have a loved one, a niece, a grandchild, a child that has this really special event, and you just wish you would be able to capture a video of it rather than a still. So, at least consider. Now, wouldn't put them top of your list, but I would put them to your list of options to consider. And that's what I do, right? When I bought my cameras, some of these that I'll talk about, they didn't make the cut, but they were on my list. First and foremost, the most important to me anyway, is image stabilization. And you say, well, man, you said it's the most important thing, and none of your cameras have IBIS or in-body stabilization. And you're right, it was on my list. I do want it, but at the end of the day, I had to make compromises, and I settled without it, right? So nothing's worse than shaky film. I had a Sony A6300 with a small prime on it, and I went to Disney World, and we were at some parade, and it was just really cool. Beautiful day. I was sitting there shooting the video. It looked good on that little screen, that tiny little back screen. I got home and it was horrible footage. I barely saved really any of that. It was too shaky. I couldn't watch it. It was horrible. So Panasonic and some others, I don't know if it's Olympus, but some of the Micro Four Thirds space, they do phenomenal. You can almost like gimbal-like type of in-body stabilization. Not so much for some other manufacturers like the Sony. It's okay. It's better than nothing. I wish at Fuji we had at least that, but it's not like to replace a gimbal. Gimbal is these devices that you can mount your camera on, and it makes your corrections for you, and it gives you that kind of very fluid-like motion. So, you know, again, it's something to consider. Fuji X-T3 doesn't have it. Fuji does have one of their camera lineups that does have it, but it's a very big, huge camera. So that's stabilization. The other one is autofocus. Now, second to shaky video, autofocus video is probably the second most annoying. There's only a few folks or a few camera companies that are doing a decent job in autofocus. Canon leads the market with their dual pixel autofocus. They do a phenomenal job. They put it in pretty much every camera they put out these days, even the budget ones like the Canon M50. The Fuji X-T2, I've never had a problem with it. The X-T3 is even better. Sony does a great job and also continues to excel and improve their autofocus. I've even heard some good things about some of the newer Nikons. Nikons for years have been horrible on autofocus, but I think they might be coming around as well. So that's another thing to consider. And low light capability would be my next, but really that's tied to your performance and sensor size, and a lot of the still stuff gets, you know, transferred over into video for optical quality. The resolution, I wouldn't be hung up on 4K. I'm glad to have 4K options, but I hardly use 4K. This Fuji has 4K 30, the X-T3 has 4K 60. The files are very large. I kind of like shooting 60 frames per second. That way you have options, especially outside, to slow things down and kind of make a more theatrical type of options. And you know, you have choices if you shoot 60. But if you shoot 30, you can't really slow it down without being choppy. I personally don't shoot video much. I shoot it at like family vacations, and I put like a small 8-minute clip, 10-minute clip together and consolidate our videos. And yeah, I might not have that 25 frames per second, you know, cinematic feel, but it's for us, and it works for me. 1080 works. I tried taking my last video. I took my Canon M50 on my last vacation, and it did okay. Video, obviously, it does great at. It just didn't fill my need or wants for still photography. So next time, I think what I'm going to do is, that might be rambling on a little bit, but next time I might pick up one of those Osmo Pockets and keep a prim on my Fuji and enjoy my photography life, and then pull the little Pocket Osmo out and shoot video, because it does have a gimbal. It's got decent audio quality, and it might not have great low light performance, but you know, that's way down on the list for me, especially on family vacations. If I could walk around and then have the best of both worlds, that's just me. So one thing that goes along with video is an audio input. Now, if you look at the Fuji camera, it's at the top there, right? It's on the very top. And Canon also has it. It's on the side here. A lot of cameras these days do have an audio input, but if you're doing any kind of video, you want to make sure that you can put an external microphone. I'm going to put it on my X-T2 just for an example. And this is a Rode microphone, and it's a just plug in on the side there. The audio, for the most part on cameras, for whatever reason, they suck. I wish they had better audio. That's a Rode Micro, and this here is a EDG, I cannot say that, but it's a little microphone that has a higher audio quality, much better audio quality than the camera. So if you're shooting any kind of video, you want to make sure that you can plug an external audio source into your camera. There are options that you can do it off camera. It's just a pain. You can do it later and sync it up in post, but something to consider. Now, form factor is really a subjective item. Go to the camera shop, touch and feel a lot of the different manufacturers, the different model numbers. I would have reservations about going too small. Now I had cameras much smaller than the Fuji X-T2 and I just didn't like it. This is my favorite size. I don't like them any bigger. I don't like them any smaller. I wish this had a little bit bigger of a grip, but this would be very comparable to the A7 series by the full frames by Sony. I just think it's like the perfect size. It's very similar to the old SLR, and I think it's a happy medium. But you can go smaller and you lose real estate sometimes, obviously, if it's a smaller camera, but you tend not to lose any image quality. So really try to figure out what's best for you, and most importantly, go to the camera stores and give them a shot and see what you like the best. When buying a new camera, you should really take into account the battery capacity of the camera. So I think some of the YouTube channels, they might dwell on this a little too much. It is an important factor. Sony, the new A7 series, the A7 III, the A7 R3, huge battery. The A9, huge batteries, they last forever. So if that's like the top of your list, make sure you add Sony to it. Now the Fujifilm, the X-T2, and now the X-T3, they share the same battery. It's not very big. The X-T3 gets a little bit more. I think it has a little bit better of a processing as far as efficiency goes. But they're small batteries, and you know, if I'm going out on vacation or a shoot, I have a couple extra batteries with me. I make sure I have one in my pocket, and it gets down to like 0.25% in the battery level. I just pop it out, pop a new one. Not that big of a deal. But you want something that does a reasonable time on battery capacity. You don't want something that just chews through batteries like crazy. Even this Canon M50, it's got this little tiny battery. I'm using Wasabi's. Look, it's even smaller than the Fuji. It's more than adequate. It's not the greatest, but it's nothing that I'd complain about either. If you guys are looking at third-party batteries, I always buy the Wasabi. I know some people tell you to buy OEMs, and although OEMs are the best choice, the price difference is just night and day difference. So I think these go for like $8 compared to like $50 for the OEMs, and I've never had a problem. So battery capacity, think about it, look at the ratings. Don't necessarily hold the ratings to be 100% factual. They have like what they call SEPA ratings. And if you look at a lot of the reviews, that's what I would recommend, to see people, if they're really dogging it and complaining about it, then it probably doesn't have a good battery capacity. But like the Fuji X-T3, and there was another one that came about that it didn't fare well on the SEPA ratings. I think it was the Canon one, the Canon R, but the people that had it said the battery's fine, no issues, it lasts pretty much the full day. So again, do a lot of research. If capacity is important to you, make sure you consider it. One of the things at the top of my list is the quality of the LCD and the viewfinder. Now this would be the viewfinder, and these are both mirrorless cameras, so they're electronic viewfinders. And to me, if it's not sharp, how do you know you're taking a good sharp picture if you can't see a sharp image on your viewfinder? Also the back screens, less is important, I think, but also if I want to zoom in to make sure I hit critical focus, I want to be able to see that on my screen or electronic viewfinder. The Fuji is just phenomenal. Sony's great. There's others that are good. I think Canon R is really rated pretty good. Now the screens, you'll see these screens are quite different. Now the Canon actually has what I call flippy screen, and the Fuji actually comes out a bit different, right? So you can go low, you can go high, right? Or you can go back in. Fuji also will come out too. Say you're shooting in a portrait style, you know, you can do one of those numbers. Oh, there, see it like that. Which do I prefer? I wish I had a flippy screen. I would like to have both. Actually, there's, I think it's the lower end of Fuji that kind of does both. The reason I say that is because for photography, I much prefer the Fuji one. It's just quick. It's just a flip. I mean, look how fast that is. If I'm going down low, I'm going up high. To do that on here, right? and it only goes one way. So you're going to have it like this. You're going to have to open it, right? It's in a bad position. And then I'm going to have to turn it and try to play around with it, right? So photography, I prefer this. Video, I prefer that. Now, I know I want my cake and eat it too. Again, Fuji actually had a design that did this, but also flipped out, which is the best of both worlds. Hopefully we see that rolling out more and more, and a lot of folks want to do it because of video. I have a different use than most. My preference for the flippy screen is for family portraits and family video. When I'm on vacation, there's a lot of pictures that don't include me in them because I'm taking pictures with the camera and I'm too lazy to go throw it on a tripod somewhere. Where when I took this camera on this last vacation, I did a lot of selfies. I had a wide angle and I just hold it out and take pictures and videos of me, my son, and my wife on the airplane seat. Now, if I did that with my Fuji, I don't know what I'm taking a picture of. So that's the whole advantage of a flippy screen. Something to consider. Again, put it on the list, but it might not be at the top of your list. One topic that gets a lot of debate these days is the number of card slots your camera should have. Now, this camera, the Fuji X-T2, has 2 slots. You can see it, 1 and 2, right? Both are SD. And they're both the UHS-2, which is the faster type, even though I don't use the more expensive cards. But a lot of cameras, including the M50 and many others, actually I can't think of any other APS-C sensor size camera that actually has 2 other than the Fuji cameras. And the big debate is 1 enough, right? People had 1 slot forever, or they have the debate where, well, when we had film, we only had the 1 film in the camera. But the fact of the matter is, 2 slots, you save your images to both cards, and you have 2 copies. And the people that usually say that never had a card fail on them. And I do use good cards, at least in my 1 slot, I use the Extreme Pro by SanDisk. But folks like me that had cards, good cards, fail on them, where you lost your images. Fortunately, it wasn't a paid gig, so in my case, but I could just imagine somebody pays you thousands of dollars to shoot this one-of-a-time event like a wedding, and you have to go to them and say, yeah, I don't have this section of your wedding because, yeah, my card died, and sorry, here's your money back. It's just not acceptable. It hurts their feelings and then your business and your reputation. But that's the people that do it on the pro side. I can speak from the consumer side that I had a card failed. It was from a family vacation. Thankfully, it wasn't all of the images, but it was like a couple days. And it was horrible. It was horrible to lose those images forever. I had to basically make do with what my wife caught on her cell phone. But it is real. It does happen. It's not, 1 in a million. It's probably 1 in 10 or 15. And if it never happens to me for the rest of my life, I hope that's the case, fine. But it has happened, and I'll do everything that I can as far as reasonably to have two cards in the camera, especially if it's for a paid event. There's no way I would do a single card. But when you're looking for a camera, something to consider. If you're looking for consumer-based camera, you're probably going to get 1 card slot, unless you're looking at a Fuji X-T2 or X-T3. But might not be huge for you. Something to kind of think about and keep on the top of your mind. But especially, I want to bring it up, especially if you're thinking about doing any kind of paid work, business, even if it's part-time shooting, senior photos, whatever, 2 cards should be a minimum if you're getting paid for a job. Just something to consider. One thing that's commonly overlooked, doesn't happen often, but it's something to check if you're buying a camera, is your tripod mount, right? You have your quarter threads in the bottom of the camera, but sometimes these are placed in a very odd position, right? Fuji does a good job. It's not interfering in any ways to the camera screen or getting your battery out, nothing like that, right? But some, including this camera, does. I tried to put a normal Arco Swiss plate on this camera and could not get this door open. This is on the Canon, this particular Canon, both the card and the battery are under this door here, if you guys can see that. All right, card's above it, then the battery. I wanted to put a tripod plate, but I couldn't find one that could let me open the battery. I found this on Amazon or eBay. It was one of the few that I could make work. So it let me position it enough off to the side so I didn't have to take this plate off every time I wanted to take the card or the battery out. So just consider it when you're looking, flip it over, look at the bottom. Is it like off to the side? Is there anything in the way? Something to think about. One major thing to consider is the lens lineup for the camera system that you're about to purchase. I have two here in front of me that they're really on the opposite spectrum. The Canon M50, there's like literally a few lenses made. It's the M series. Yes, you can get the adapter and you can mount any of the EFS and EF lenses to it. They'll work close to native because it's the same, lens technology as far as the software goes. But it adds size, it adds weight to it. And if you're buying native, or if you're buying new, try to buy the native series of lenses for that camera. You're always going to have better performance out of them. The other side of the spectrum is the Fuji. Now there's just it's only a couple of the lenses that I have. This is the Canon lens. Fuji is just high-end quality. It would be on the same plane as far as quality as the Canon L series, the professional, huge, beautiful lenses that Canon produces. And they're smaller. Again, it's an APS-C line of camera, smaller sensor, smaller glass, cheaper usually, but there's a lot of them. A lot of the focal lengths, this is a 35mm prime, zoom lenses, they have long telephotos, wide angles. They have a lot of different options, and a lot of them are affordable, but very, very good quality, very deep on options as far as that goes. One thing to consider that most people don't really talk about is the quality of JPEGs that get rendered out of the camera. It's maybe not important to some people, especially professionals, if they're actually post-processing every one of those pictures. And I don't, especially if I'm going on vacation. If I take 500 pictures, I want them all to look good. I want them all to have great colors and pop, but I don't want to post-process all of them. I'm starting to learn post-processing myself, and I'm starting to get a little bit better at it. It takes me a lot of time, but it's not fun for me to do 500 pictures from vacation. I want to have all 500 look good and maybe hand select 10, 15 portraits, or a group shot, or just whatever to boost highlights to really focus on and make those 10 or 15 top notch. So it's important to me. Fuji does a great job with the film simulations, so you can do the acros and it's a black and white and some others. Very, 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 very nice. I shoot both RAW and JPEG, and I have an option afterwards. Not so much. I took the Canon on my last vacation and fell very short on the quality of RAWs, as do a lot of manufacturers. I'm sorry, JPEGs rather than RAWs. So something to consider. Again, it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. So I saved the most important for last, and that's the cost. This is going to vary across the board, right? So it really depends on how much experience in photography, how much you want to invest into the hobby, how much money you actually have. Are you going to do it professionally? Let me just give you some kind of ballparks of where I would go with this. If you know nothing, you're just getting into the hobby or thinking you might want to like it, buy a $100 to $200 DSLR, consumer grade DSLR with a kit lens. Don't buy a bunch of lenses or flashes or anything like that. See how you like it. You can always sell it for pretty much what you pay for it on like eBay. And better yet, before you do that, put a social media post, Facebook or whatever, asking folks if they know, if they have or know of anybody that has a camera that they would like to part with, because you're wanting to pursue this hobby in photography, people will probably jump all over that and give you their camera. There's so many of my friends and family that have moved away from their DSLRs and moved to their cell phones. You know, that they always have it with them. I'm the only person that still has a dedicated camera, and they still have these in the drawers and stuff. So they'd be loving to give them to a loved one or family member, or just anybody they knew that could get some use out of it. That would be great. So that's $0 to like $200. Moving up from there, the X-T2. I paid like $2,000 for this camera. I think you can buy the new. I paid $2,000 for it new a couple years ago. I think you can buy this body only now for like $700 to $800. It's just as good of a camera today as it was 2 years ago. It's fantastic. Lenses you can buy used as well. I've bought 2 or 3 lenses used, and they're just like new. People tend to take care of their stuff if it's good stuff. But I don't think it can be beat. There's some others out there like the Canon 80D, and I won't go into the details. I'll keep this kind of short. But I think you'd find this one hard to beat for that price. If you want to buy new, I'd say from $1,000 to $1,500. Leading the pack would be the X-T3. You know, might be a little biased, but I don't see anything touching it for that price. The Canon, Nikon offerings are always way short. Sony's got a couple with the A6400 and the 6500, but the lenses selection's just not there. I think the camera's a little small. If you ever wanted to do it like prosumer, professional, great cameras, great output. I had a 6300, phenomenal camera, but yeah, I'd say X-T3 first, and then the 6400 second. If moving up to say $1,500 to $2,500 is the Sony a7 III, hands down. $2,000, full frame, more features than you could ever want. You know, dual card slots. Fuji's got dual card slots too, but great video, everything you want, both shooting your kids and shooting a big wedding professionally. It can do it all. And there's some obviously some higher end cameras, the A9 Sony and a few others, but for $2,000, I don't think it can be beat. Canon, if you really want Canon, you know, there's the RP and the R. R is a decent camera. I just don't think compared to the Sony, I don't think it's even close. But and then obviously you can go on up there from there. But if you're watching this, you're probably not looking at the 2500 and on up cameras. But I hope that answers your questions about what I would consider and things I would consider or consider when I'm looking to purchase, when you're looking to purchase a new camera. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I hope you stick around for this series. This is the first of many in the series. I'm going to go through how to shoot manual and what a camera does and the different options. So please subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. Take care.